I'm back after a bit of a hiatus. I was doing the solo walk and talk episodes, and now I'm back for the guest format. I have today Natalin Avci. She's a healing artist, which includes a Reiki master, writer, and channel. Natalin, thank you for coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
How did you get started on your healing journey?
That's a great question. I think it started with physical pain. I had gotten into a pretty bad rollerblading accident, and I completely shattered my tibia and my fibula. And I was at the height of my modeling career. I was with my person, my forever, and everything from the outside was great. But as soon as I was incapacitated, my life started unraveling. I had to move back in with my parents because I needed someone to take care of me. And I was addicted to pain pills, and I started meditating, and everything that I had been avoiding until that moment, it just came crashing down. And so I tried talk therapy, which was so crucial at the time. I saw doctors and, it was just mild depression, high functioning anxiety. No one seemed too worried, but there was this little voice in the back of my head that told me that something was not okay. And I just followed that voice. And so I started dipping my toes into holistic medicine. I saw an acupuncturist, and he was the first person to validate that there was an imbalance. And he suggested it might be emotional. So I kind of, there was a part of me that always remained curious and really lighthearted about it until dun, dun, dun. Fast forward, I'm sitting with my somatic therapist, and she's asking me a series of questions, and she's asking me where in my body I'm feeling things and what I'm feeling. And I completely shut down. As she continued to probe, I hit my threshold of tolerance and I left my body, it felt like. And I just remember her saying, "Natalin, lower your voice." And she was very firm with me. And I was so embarrassed. I had been yelling at this woman who's trying to help me. I realized how disconnected I was from my body. I didn't know how or why. And I had been leaving my body for a really long time. This just didn't start in her office. So it really began to unravel, the trauma drama and why we behave the way we do. And it was about 2 years of just processing grief. And I felt like I was in the middle of an ocean, and I'd process one thing and a wave would come and it would crash, and it was another one. And at one point I was like, this is dumb. Like, why am I putting myself through all this? This is pointless. But that voice, it just kept telling me to just believe. And I heard the word believe for about a year straight. And I was just like looking for answers, just like everyone. And the crazy thing is that the truth is so simple. It's just our relationship to the truth that's complicated. So I struggled with that for a bit, but I moved through the trauma. And I think that's just what I would like to send the message to anyone dealing with their trauma is just remember to move through it, because we can get caught up in the drama of it. And yeah, and everyone has something different. But for me, because it was unprocessed, this core wound was unprocessed, it was as if there was now unprocessed trauma over the trauma, kind of like a scar tissue, and it had hardened me. And that's why I was so disconnected in my feelings. And I came to the point where obviously, everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. But when you're going through it, you can't see clearly. You're very confused. Everything's foggy. And and I just kept going. I kept trying things. I got into plant medicine and earth medicines. I tried sound therapy, color therapy, everything. I was just became really enamored by it. And I was just seeing how things were opening and unlocking for me. And I think it's really important to try different things and not take people's word, because you are the expert at knowing you. yeah, so I guess that's kind of how it all started.
Definitely an eventful background. When you said you heard a voice, was that the first time you've heard it, or was that something that's always been with you?
I know now that it's always been with me, but there was just too much static, to hear it. You kind of got to tune your channel to your like authentic frequency. And now, I mean, it's blasted. It's clear. It's concise to the point. But I think it's strengthening that relationship with your higher self, source, universal consciousness, whatever you want to call it. But it's your intuition. It's guiding you. We're not here alone. It's a myth.
And when you say your channel, what does that mean? Because I know people are using a lot today and it has different variations. What does it mean to you?
To me, it means that it's frequency and it's energy. So I tune into my authentic frequency. And I kind of, if I'm working with somebody or even this talking, you kind of open the door to a deeper part of you, the part of you that knows, not your monkey brain that's thinking, analyzing, processing, putting things in boxes, making it orderly. There's a deeper part of us that knows, the heart knows. There's this wisdom inside of us that needs to be expressed. So I channel when I'm writing, when I'm doing anything artistic, when I'm with my loved ones. It's just this unconditional love that's pouring out. And there's knowledge there. There's a lot of humor, by the way. There's a lot of humor. And things that I didn't understand. I know we're so quick to go to the philosophy of things. And I think philosophy should probably be introduced last because we over intellectualized life, I think. And there's a couple of things you need to understand about philosophy is like understanding that humans are a paradox, right? Every parable, every metaphor, every scripture, it's all about paradox. And then you kind of just get the inside joke on what's happening and you start really relaxing into who you are. And I think that's what a channel is. I'm so relaxed into who I am. So the person next to me that's wanting to receive maybe some information, guidance, support, they're in a space where they have to match my frequency and information, hunches. Maybe their inner voice gets triggered. Maybe they see things, remember things. I think it's a big process of remembering. We're not accumulating things and we're not seeking things to help us. We're remembering we're already exactly who we need to be.
That's a great explanation. And I know some of the mainstream channels, they always have a really positive message like, oh, just love, love. And that's great. Could something mischievous ever come through?
There's definitely mischievous energies. And, it's just like there's dark and light in us. And it's learning how to have those things work for you and not against you. And I think most people would probably, if they come across something mischievous, want to resist it. And what happens with a mischievous kid when you tell them no? They start having really a lot of fun with you at your expense, right? Because we do have free will. So, yeah, there are definitely mischievous energies.
That makes sense. Thanks for explaining that. I've always been wondering that. You also said that your life unraveled at one point. That seems to be a common theme, the dark night of the soul or whatever, as someone wants to call it. Do you think that's necessary for someone to get on their spiritual or healing path?
If it's not happening to you, then I don't think it's necessary for you. But for me, it was very necessary. And it wasn't just once. It's kind of like my road to you. It was my relationship with my father was pretty tumultuous and not where I wanted it to be. And a series of events happened. And one day he asks me to accompany him on a doctor's visit. And I wasn't very thrilled, but I went. And it was the first time the doctor asked me what I did for a living randomly. And I was like, I'm a Reiki practitioner. It just came out just like that. I blurted it out. And he told me, he was like, I think you should give your father Reiki today. And I said, that's a odd thing, but So I asked my dad, I said, would you let me give you Reiki? And he was open to it. And he didn't even ask what it was, and which was very odd for my dad. And so we went home and I was like, I'm going to be touching you. He was not a person that was able to receive love, but he allowed me to touch him. And so I began giving him Reiki, and immediately his chest started convulsing and his whole body was just shaking. And I remember him grabbing my hand and saying, "What's happening to me?" And I was like, "Dad, your heart's opening." It was really powerful. And in that moment, like, language was how we heard each other, through words. And we were communicating in a completely different language. And we finally found our groove. And I was starting to get a glimpse as to what our relationship was really about, why our souls connected in this life. And it wasn't the father and daughter relationship that you see on TV. And as we continued to do Reiki, he was really open. He was feeling a bunch of things in his body. And he was welcoming it, which was really interesting. We started healing, like, I mean, generational, ancestral, just, it was so much healing happening on a cellular level. Like, I started to actually enjoy my dad's company. And then one day I was giving him Reiki and I got the message that he had cancer and that it had metastasized and he didn't have long. And it was just, oh, my faith was just shaken to my core. I was like, what a cruel thing to give me this gift of Reiki, mend my relationship with my father, and then take him away, right? And I didn't know what to do with that information at that time. So I told my sister, and my family went through their whole awakening with my awakening. And it was like me coming out as a witch, you know? And my sister's like, how do you know this and that? And I was like, he needs to see a doctor. And I think a lot of people need to understand that all these Reiki is medicine and it's an ancient practice. And I know it's looked at as like alternative medicine, but these practices are actually the original medicine. But since we have modern medicine, why would we not use both? That's just my argument. So of course he has to see a doctor. Yes. So he saw a doctor. He had lung cancer, stage 4. It had metastasized. And pretty much my life was unraveling because I didn't know what I was supposed to do with this information. And as I continued to just connect with him, basically the message I got was that I was going to help him transition. And I was supposed to give him this maternal love that he never received, not even from my mom. And whoa, that just turned everything on its head to me. I was like, so these roles that we play are interchangeable. And this father-daughter relationship, it had now turned into mother-son. How is that possible? And to just like really relax into that. And I ended up being his doula. I had never been a death doula. I didn't know what to do, but I kind of just leaned into it because no one else was going to do it. And yeah, and to this day, I'm like, the more aware I become, the less I know.
Yeah, I found that too. And it could seem cruel that if you look at it, because we're here to teach each other lessons. And if you want to look at it, maybe it was your dad's duty to transform while he was here, to have that relationship with you. And then he fulfilled that mission and it was completed. So he did what he needed to do when he came here. And when you look at it from that perspective, it makes sense, but it could still be hard.
It was. And if I'm being honest, there was a part of me that was still a little bit angry. I was like, what am I supposed to do with this now? You know? And what happened was just phenomenal after. Just when I just kind of surrendered to that's what we agreed on. And we fulfilled it. And once I just let it go, it was as if he was sending these men into my life. Just, they were coming out of the woodwork. They were teachers, mentors like you. They were friends. And they had absolutely zero agenda. And they were really helping me heal my father wound. And it was so beautiful. I had never felt that safety, that paternal safety. And I started really relaxing into it and actually healing my masculine energy. And it really needed to be integrated. And it led to this beautiful ayahuasca ceremony. And so, when you're in the thick of it and you're like this, you're looking at it, but when you can just kind of let go and see a broader perspective, I was like, oh, so I was supposed to experience this with a lot of more people that have come into my life and are helping me heal that divine masculine and are embodying it. And it's been so beautiful. Like I would never want it any other way.
Ayahuasca. Funny
Ayahuasca.
you should bring that up. How has your experience with that been?
Well, it was funny because I thought I was ready. I had already done a lot of plant and earth medicines, and they say she calls. And I was checking my phone and nothing was happening. I was like, I'm waiting. Mother, call me. And so literally, like, once I let that go, I was meditating and she called me. And I said, oh, I was very honored at this point because I had been really waiting, like an apprentice, And so I reached out to people, and every time I booked a session, something would happen. And I knew enough at this point that these things can't be forced. And then another man came into my life and he said, I'm doing ayahuasca for my birthday. And I'm having this intimate circle. And I think you need to be there. And I was like, yes, I do. You don't know. There had been 8 months to this point that I waited. And obviously those 8 months were so important. I was being prepared for something. And what happened in those 2 days was outrageous. It's kind of, these experiences are really hard to put into human words. But basically, I could finally understand the relationship between man and woman and feel it. And there's something just so beautiful about a woman completely embodying her feminine energy and a man completely embodying his masculine energy and experiencing one another and witnessing one another in our full glory with zero agenda. And the first night was amazing. I mean, a cosmic orgasm. And it was funny because that night, the men that I met, it was all about me and men. It was so interesting. But I was with this group of men and I was helping them. That was the first night. I mean, the things that were happening is just kind of out of this world. It blew me away. And it was wonderful. And then the second night was a big struggle. Like, if you ever want to arm wrestle Mother Ayahuasca, I highly suggest you don't. But that was the night that I got to the bottom of everything. And it was like a 6-hour birth. Like, I was in labor. And Mother Ayahuasca was my midwife. And, anytime I needed anything, one of these gentlemen would just come in, and they're in their full experience at the moment too. These aren't the people that were facilitating. These were people experiencing it. I didn't even have to say anything. If I needed water, it was there. If I needed someone to walk me to the bathroom. And the amount of healing that happened in that room on a cellular level, and I truly believe with everything in my heart that this reverberates into the universe. I started getting a glimpse of like, oh my gosh, this is the beginning of a reconciliation between man and woman. This is where we're headed. And it was so, so beautiful. I don't know how else to describe it. But for the first time in my life, I was really starting to feel completely safe in my body and allowing myself to feel my power. I had been afraid of my power. And it sounds so ridiculous, but to really, and it was otherworldly. So I mean, I think I could get into it and probably write a book about it, of like how basically, once you slay the dragon, you become the dragon. And that's where I'm at now. And it's like, then you got to balance that with humility and how you go out in the world and how you show up. And talking about a paradox, it's like, when you start feeling your full power, you actually show up so much more gentle. I am so much more gentle than I've ever been, and compassionate. And I think a lot of the times people, awaken or become spiritual, and they have this, kind of spiritual ego. And I think that it's really important to get that in check, because just because someone's not, as awake, they're in the beginning stages, they're waking up from their deep slumber, doesn't mean that there's not something they can teach you.
I give you credit. My first ayahuasca ceremony, I definitely wasn't in a state where I could take care of anyone for sure. How was that, knowing it was your first and still looking out for people? Was it scary or it just felt natural?
The main facilitator came up to me and she was like, "This is your first time?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "But you knew everything." I knew every dance. I knew every song. I was given my power pose. I mean, it was as if the keys to the kingdom were handed to me, and people were really shocked. I was shocked. I was just really starting to experience myself in full. And what was happening was I was remembering. I had been doing this for a really long time on both sides, facilitating and receiving the medicine. And so it was this remembrance the first night. And anytime someone was struggling, I was just sending them. It was almost like codes were coming out, and the codes would be sent to them. And we were just dancing it away, singing it away, whatever was like bothering us, whatever was coming up that was uncomfortable. And it was just, the first night was just cosmic bliss. But then the second night, it's like she gave me, and that's what she told me the second night when I was struggling. And I was like, "Help." I was in the middle of literally a labor, and I was like, "I need help. I can't do this." And she said, in her mother ayahuasca way, she said, "I already gave you the keys to the kingdom." And she kind of just put me on pause. And I had to really dig deep. And it's the crazy thing. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I was just resisting. And then she just wanted me to really look at it and not just glance, because that's what I was doing. She was showing me everything. It's like triage, right? She's showing you everything you need to see. And the first thing you resist, she's like, "Oh, I'm going to really show you this." And so there was things I was trying to fake it with her. Basically, I was being inauthentic with Mother Ayahuasca. And she was like, "Bitch, no." No. And she was making me really look at these things that were just, I was just like peeking with, I was just being like a little kid. She's like, "No, you need to look at this. And it's you." Sit with that, digest that, relax into that. And it was crazy because it wasn't even something big. I mean, my experience with the somatic therapist was way scarier. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, this expectation. And once I sat with it, it was really funny. She was like, "Oh, wow, you're really having a hard time with this delivery." And I was like, "I am." She was like, "Okay, I think I'm going to help you." And I was like, "Oh, you could have tried 6 hours ago." And finally, it was, I don't know how to put it into words, but it was almost like an emergency C-section. It was outrageous. And she helped. She came in. It was as if I was getting blood transfusions. It was like this whole ordeal for me. And that's when I gave birth to a dragon, and then I became it.
That's pretty wild.
So wild.
Ayahuasca can unlock hidden knowledge, though. I've heard musicians say they've written songs while on it that when the ceremony was over, they actually produced. It's crazy how we actually do have previous lifetime knowledge within us.
Like, whoever's watching, I want you to know that you have an indestructible force inside you, and it's just calling you, and it's waiting for it to be realized. And and that's what I'm passionate about, is empowering people and seeing people get a taste of their own power. It's exhilarating. But yes, but is it for everyone's nervous system? No. And that's the thing too that I think that people need to keep in mind is, like, say we take a group of people to, I don't know, Mount Kilimanjaro or something, right? You're going to have your plan. You might be like, I have an itinerary. I'm going to plan breaks. This is what is enjoyable for me. Somebody might just wander off. And then there's people like me that don't care about anything. I'm here and I want to get to the top. And that comes with a whole set of challenges. But that's what I found out in this journey is like, that's who I am. And these are these parts of me that I hadn't embraced. I had embraced being loving, being caring, giving, but I felt like I was in a cage. This dragon was caged up, and there were parts of me that I hadn't explored. Like, I like to drive really fast. I like to take risks. I like to have intense experiences. I like to be very physical, and all these things that were not very ladylike. I had suppressed, and it was these men showing me how to be a man, pretty much. And then the medicine showing me that this part of me needed to be actualized and expressed. And once that started happening, it was so scary because you've never experienced it before. You don't know how it's going to be. It's the complete unknown. And I remember when I embodied this dragon and it was outside when it happened, and I walked back into the ceremonial space. It was a sci-fi movie. It was like, I was so big. It was like, I just took one step and I was like in someone's face. I was like, whoa. And she was like, balance. And she took me back outside and I was like, oh, wow. Now that's the work now. How to balance these energies and have it work for you and not against you, because I have family, I have friends. I have to be able to still remain relatable and connect to people. You know what I mean? That we're here to have a human experience with everyone, not just other dragons,
I'm glad you brought up that you don't recommend it for everyone, because the first time I did it, I was so excited and I was thinking, wow, everyone has to do this. But now I know better and I've seen a lot of people do it. I'm like, no, some people, yes, not everyone though. If someone's a little crazy or narcissistic, I've seen it actually make them worse. It's best for people that are ready, that are called for it, that are already open to healing or the message they're going to receive, because sometimes it can be really powerful and intense, even overbearing, as you mentioned with the birth experience.
There was one point, that's when she stepped in. I was like, I'm going to die. I'm not going to make it. I was so weak. It was such a physically exhausting. And it was that moment when I said I was going to die. She's like, oh, you've had enough. Okay. And that's the thing. It's like, are you willing to let go of everything? Are you willing to let go of your relationship, your personality construct, like everything that you know of you? Are you willing to walk away from that? Because that's what this medicine, that's what it asks of you. Because if not, you're going to arm wrestle her and she's going to throw you around like a rag doll, and it's not going to be enjoyable. And then what are you going to do with that? That's the whole thing. Because it's like, it's courageous. You went and did ayahuasca, but then how are you going to integrate that? And how are you going to ground that into your real life? That's the work. And I think that's what's missing with a lot of people, because they want to have the pictures for Insta. It's like a badge of honor. Yeah, I went to Peru. Yeah. And that's fantastic. That was the initiation, right? What are you going to do with that? How is your life going to show the world what you learned? Or how are you going to learn from that? And how are you going to make your life better?
That was one of the most depressing things. Was I would sit in the closing circles after these ceremonies, and people would have these profound insights. Then right after that, they just dust their hands off, get up and be like, oh, back to the cubicle, and just throw away all that knowledge that was given to them. And that was another problem. Is I've seen it where it goes wrong is the people that don't integrate, or they do it too much. I've seen people do it every weekend, and then it usually leads nowhere good for sure.
I remember at one point during my labor, whatever, I looked to my left and this woman was on her phone. This during an ayahuasca ceremony. And then in the closing circle, she said it was her 100th ceremony. And this is without judgment. I was really just confused that how could she be able to remember her code. Like, how did you get in your phone? Like, no, seriously, it was not, I was just really just wondering. So yes, sometimes we're just chasing those heightened experiences. And I think the real work is the day-to-day, the mundane. How is that affecting that, right? Because it's like these high-end experiences, it's like thinking love is going to be like a rom-com. It's not going to be like that every day, right? So to me, it's just a little bit misleading. And sometimes that's why I don't like to experience these. Like, my experiences are always big, sci-fi, otherworldly. And I sat next to a guy who slept for 2 days. So we don't know how the medicine's going to work with your body chemistry. Nobody knows. It's a mystery. Doctors don't know. And you want to talk about the original doctors. There's these shamans in the jungle. Do you know how many different plants they had to test? They might not be wearing lab coats. They're not being in a laboratory, but to kind of not see that that's not science, it's really an injustice to you, because it's really remarkable.
It really is a technology. And it makes you wonder how they even knew how to come up with it, because the vine is from one part of the jungle and the roots from a completely separate part of the jungle. How do they know to put those two together? What percentage to make the mixtures of? It's really amazing what information that you can get when you're using other medicines. I know that how that was combo was discovered was it came to a shaman while he was in an ayahuasca ceremony. So a lot of these medicines have really interesting backstories. And you're also right. You can't really explain what a ceremony is going to be like. I remember I was doing a lot of research. Oh, what's it going to do when I do it? Because I was so nervous, and you should be. It just means you respect the medicine. But one person on a forum said, I'll tell you my experience, but I'm doing it reluctantly, because what happened to me isn't going to happen to you. And what happens to you isn't going to happen to you again if you do it a second or third time. It's never the same experience. So that's why you bring up a good point when you say you should just let go.
I love that you said respect the medicine. I sometimes feel like that, the integrity of that, and like working with you in combo, like, wow, the way you respect that medicine, and the way, and all these medicines, all these earth and plant med, they're sacred to me. I really, with everything, I feel like we're made of the same thing. That's how close I feel to them. And yes, you have to do your research. You have to. And why are you doing it? I think people forget why they're doing it. Are you just chasing a heightened experience? Because these medicines are not that easy on your adrenal glands. It's a very physical experience. And I think there's so much to consider. And like you said, I think these shamans in the jungle, I think that they're getting messages from a higher power that told them to mix these two things up out of all the vines in this. Like, how amazing was that? It blows me away to think about it. And how many more plants I'm sure we're going to discover in our lifetime.
Yeah. I've known people that have got it screwed up from some of the medicines. I knew this one person, and he made his own DMT. He called it street DMT. I know, it's so wrong right from the get-go. And he was doing it more often than you think someone would be smoking DMT. And it ended up screwing him up for a while. His last experience, it didn't really do much, but then he couldn't sleep. He had complete insomnia for a while. I think it was around 6 months. The only thing that could help him was acupuncture at that point.
What was going on in his life that he was trying to make DMT, and then he was just, I didn't even think you could get addicted to DMT. That is wild.
I didn't want to rub salt in his wound, so I didn't inquire too much because he was suffering. But that's a good question. The one thing he did say was he was pursuing answers. He was seeking something. And he said on the initial ones, it was telling him you already have the answers. But that was the answer, yet he still kept doing it. And that's where I've also heard of people going wrong with ayahuasca. There was this one lady where it told her what ceremony, stop doing it. This is your last one. Then she did it again. And that's screwed her up for a year. It took her a while to recover from it.
I've heard people with Buffo, which is another one of my great teachers, have had those where like they're just not themselves for like a year or two. And it's terrifying. And obviously, we're not in their bodies. We don't know what's going on. We don't know why they were doing them. I just know my experiences, and it takes a lot of preparation, a lot of thought. And it was just like how I met you. Like, I say this story every time I see you, but Johnny Sage appeared on I saw your webpage, and I knew that I had to meet you. And it wasn't with expectation or anything. And I remember telling my sister, I said, look, I'm going to go meet Johnny Sage. And she's like, what are you going to do? I was like, oh, I'm going to take toad's venom. Was it? No,
frog.
Frog
Poison.
Frog poison, sorry. Buffot's toad's venom. So I'm going to take frog poison with him. And she's like, you're going to meet a strange guy in Los Angeles and take frog poison. She's like, are you crazy? I was like, no, I haven't never felt more sure in my life. And it ended up being a positive experience for me. That was my path. So I think it's a slippery slope for us to even go there with anyone else's experience. And maybe that is part of their experience. Maybe sometimes you do have to go crazy to find yourself. And that might be their experience. I don't know how else to justify that.
And while I agree, Bufo could definitely screw you up too if not done properly. Combo was the one you did with me. That's the frog one.
Yes.
How has that changed you ever since? And how was your experience doing that?
I think that was my initiation, like being, inebriated to some level in the presence of a man and feeling so safe. And there was like so much trust. And it was the beginning of me, I think, detoxifying my system. And it was, I went through it, and it really just showed me that I chose a physical experience. That's my journey, and not to shy away from it, and not to resist. It's just, you have to, it's going to be really painful if you resist it.
Exactly. That's another one. You just have to let go. It's a great lesson in learning how to do that. And then you also mentioned you learned Reiki. What called you to study that?
I was at a woman's retreat and I was like, yes, we're going to unleash our inner goddesses. And we did. But that's when I started performing like healing rituals on some women. I'd never done this in my entire life. And they were having pretty profound experiences. And one woman came up to me after and she's like, just sharing her experience and how appreciative she was. And I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm happy that I'm not in trouble, that I was like touching these women. And she was like, you've got to pursue this. So that's when I came across your webpage. I didn't know what you were selling, but I was buying. And after we did Gumbo, you said, oh, I teach Reiki. I think it'd really benefit you. And the moment I did Reiki, it was just like the ayahuasca experience. I was remembering how to do it. I had been doing this for who knows how long. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, it was so familiar. I think at one point you were like, oh, you're doing Reiki like back in the day they used to do Reiki this way, your hand positions. We have actually modernized it. This is how you do it. So like, how do you explain that? No one in my family did Reiki. And then for me to get that message that I was going to help my dad transition and to mend my relationship before he passed. So yeah, you've kind of been a really big part of my healing journey. And then kind of 360 for you to invite me on your show. And I think it's so important to model these relationships, that these roles are so interchangeable. Teacher, student, parent, child, therapist, patient. We all can learn from each other. And you've always been open like that. And you've had a lot of humility and integrity. So you've been like a role model to me.
Well, thank you. I've tried to be a good teacher and lead with example. It's hard because I feel we're at a point where there's no blueprint anymore. It used to be a Reiki master was a Reiki master, a sound healer was a sound healer. Now people are combining them. They're coming up with their own versions of them. It's a really hard and difficult time to be doing what we're doing right now.
I think we're being tested so deeply because the guru age, it's over. It has collapsed. There's still people clinging as we see what happened in Rama and all that stuff. It's all coming to in every other industries as well. This whole imbalance of power. I think it's like because people are becoming their own healers. And it's like us leaning into that and seeing what is this going to transform into? Because yeah, there's a new modality, I feel like every day. People are remixing it, It's like, it's the wild, wild west, to be quite honest. I mean, certificate, schmertificate, I did it once. I can heal myself. I can heal it. And so then that's where I cleared, like having clear discernment on like who you work with. And I think people always ask me for recommendations. Oh, where did you go to do ayahuasca? Oh, where did you go to do Reiki? And I think it's like robbing them of that journey. It's a journey to find your mentor. It's a journey to find Mother Ayahuasca. And we just want to rush to the end, right? And and she actually showed me that too, and like how there's cycles and stages and phases. And we just want to rush through them, right? We want to go to the top of the mountain. I want to get there. But a lot of the times when you do that, you find yourself at the beginning all over again. And it's because you're not fully in the moment of that phase and that particular lesson. So yeah, anyone that's like, looking for recommendations, I would say just trust that inner voice and, the little breadcrumbs. We live in a very magical, malleable reality. And following those breadcrumbs, like it's a part of the journey. And I know people hear it are exhausted about hearing this, but it's the truth. It's the journey, finding your mentor, finding your teacher, finding the right medicine for you or the therapist or whatever it is. Because, I mean, modern medicine is still very accessible and might work with your nervous system better. So it's like, and that's kind of my work, is like becoming your authentic self, like being the expert of you. Only you know you. I mean, you ever go to a doctor? They're asking you most of the questions. They're basically telling me, tell me how you're doing. Help me help you. Right? They're not there and like doing all this like abracadabra, you're better. And I think people need to know that like no one's going to heal you. No one's going to make it all better. Only you. You have that power. And it's the journey of like finding out that everything you're looking for, just like that you were saying, the guy who went crazy on the DMT and it was already in there. Everything.
Yeah. And he was so resistant to hearing that message, even though it was a very good message and what he needed to hear. He didn't want it. And it's not just him. I see a lot of people, they always want to look outside themselves. The answers are out there.
Yeah. And I think it's all about like, these insecurities or neuroses that we have. I like to look at them like they're just inauthenticities. So it's just peeling back the layers of like letting go of all that really isn't you, that you just picked up on the way, picked up from school, from society, your family, all these beliefs and that come from belief systems. And as we start shedding those, we can start really seeing what we are at our core, our true essence. And it's so much more than this physical body, although our bodies are amazing and they take care of us. We're a lot more than our bodies.
Yeah, it's amazing how intelligent our bodies really are and how capable they are of healing themselves. But some people don't want to hear that. I've had clients, and another healer I talked to about this said she has too. They are kind of skeptical when they're like, what do you mean you can't heal me? I thought you were a healer. And you try to explain that and to like, no, they just expect one session and then boom, all like 2-3 decades of bad habits. And they expect you to like reverse it instantly.
Yeah, I've come across that. Or even just regular talk therapy. I know people that have 2 therapists because one's just not enough. They're not helping them the way they need to be helped. And that's their journey though, right? That's the path that they chose. And it's like you, at some point, you can continue to serve them or things will happen where your frequencies are so off that there'll be like dissonance and somehow you guys just won't be able to work together anymore and he'll have to find somebody else. Like there's just this greater organization. Like we really don't have to worry about, and that's another thing that I want to make clear for people is that when we say the term like let go or surrender, for me personally, it was so scary because I'm like, what are you talking about? No one's ever taught in the history of me, no one's ever taught me how to surrender and let go, right? So what does that mean? And I had a real fear that letting go, like I will lose control of my body and everything and I'll die. And I think what letting go is just relaxing into the control that already exists. Like we're here sitting on the chair. We don't have to concentrate and create gravity. The sun rises and sets. There's seasons. There is a sophisticated organization. And I think that's why nature is there to show us. It's all there.
That's a great point. And another circumstance I've seen, and when you mentioned the kind of cult relationship, is some students want to be codependent on you, oddly enough. I teach to empower the student because they're going to have to do it on their own at some point. And I truly believe part of our mission here is to find the light within ourselves and share that. But some students don't want that. They want that kind of, oh, tell me what to do. And it can be unhealthy. And I think that's where those circumstances, like you mentioned, come about. It is some of those gurus' faults for sure. There are toxic ones. And I agree. I'm glad that's ending. But also, oddly enough, I found there's toxic students as well that encourage that type of relationship.
Yeah, it's not just butterflies and rainbows out here. Although there's a lot of that, But yeah, I think it's clear discernment, listening to that inner voice. I've had so many times where, a client will cancel and then I'll follow up and something doesn't fit right and you just got to let it go. And then you find out down the line, this, that, and the other, we're just no longer a match. Because that's the thing about teachers. And I think is that we're continually working on ourselves. It's not like I'm enlightened. I got the answers. I'm Anna. Let's play. No, we're going through our own things. And I think that's what a good teacher and mentor is, that they're constantly challenging themselves and pushing themselves to the limit and growing. And I've outgrown teachers. And I'm sure some teachers have outgrown me as a student. It's just the way it is. And because there's a balancing force that's taking place. We just don't want to get in the way.
I've outgrown teachers too. And that was a hard thing early on in my healing journey. But I was doing so much work on myself and I liked them, but things just start falling apart. It's a really hard time and something that's really not talked about either. But you're right. I think there's a new type of leader emerging right now. And it's not just the enlightened guru or monk on the mountaintop. It's the real person who's been through stuff. And once they figure out how to get past that, they share that information. And it resonates because, if they dealt with it, it could help me out. So I think it's this whole new paradigm coming about, which is why I also mentioned it's hard to figure this out, where we fit in and what's our way forward.
Absolutely, 100% I agree with you. For me, it's all about embodiment. It's like we don't need more philosophy. We are drowning in information. And most of it is misinformation, but we're starving for wisdom, right? And it's like, what is wisdom? It's like the knowledge of the experience without the emotional charge. So my life is my philosophy. I'm just embodying who I really am, my authentic self. And believe it or not, that's all it is. That's all. You inspire people all day long. You trigger people also. I think that's a good thing too. Sometimes you trigger people and to not take it personal. It's a part of their journey. We cross paths for that triggering and we don't know what that's going to lead to. But yeah, there's a new leadership and I think it's an authenticity and authentic empowerment. It's like there's no more that gatekeeping. I'm going to give you these little drops of information. You have to sign up for this workshop to come get more. I mean, we all know that person too, and it might work for them, but that's not who I am. That's not who you are. And the teachers that I come across with and continue to work with, they have deep reverence for this work and integrity, and they're constantly growing. They're working on themselves.
That's what's so odd is when I was new on the path, I looked up to the teachers that were supposed to be, that knew everything, that they were perfect. And now I look back on it thinking, that was stupid because there's always more knowledge out there. You want to be with the person that's still working on themselves, still seeking out more information, because there's always something you could be working on. So that's why it's so strange that was appealing to me. But when you're new, sometimes you don't know better.
Yeah, you're green. And again, you're looking for all the answers, but I think that's the journey. It's the beautiful part. It's like, you come across all these roadblocks and then you become a teacher and you make, like you made me aware. You're like, the spiritual world can be dicey. And then we had that experience together, and and I had been so lucky. Like, it was butterflies and rainbows until that point. I had been extremely lucky, and that really woke me up. And I was like, "Oh wow, okay." And I never understood that. That was another thing, like, protect your energy. And I'm like, what do I like walk around with sage all day in Palo Santo? And I'm like, I mean, this is a little unrealistic, but I got that in that moment. But yeah, it's I don't know. I as you can tell, I'm so excited about it. This work is just everything to me. You learn so much. You're constantly in the unknown, and you constantly have to be in the moment, because if you're not, that pendulum will swing and just knock you back to game over. Please start again. So, like, just becoming that observer, and just staying in that sweet spot.
This path could certainly be brutal, and at times, I'm like, oh, why me? But you're right. There's really nothing else to do. Once you're on it, you have to keep going. We can't be asleep anymore. Once you know this information, you know it. You can't unlearn it. And once you've seen these things, you can't unsee them. And when you look at it as a whole, you realize why you chose it. As we're talking about, there's very difficult moments, but in the bigger picture, it does make sense.
Yeah, when you move from like believing to knowing, if you know better, you have to do better, because it becomes extremely painful. Like, imagine if we decided today, we're just gonna go back to, how it used to be. Like, I would be something would happen. Like, you can't go back. And when you're out of alignment, and you're in the place of knowing, and you're moving to self-mastery and stuff, and you're out of alignment, I feel like it's magnified. Even the slightest thing can just seem catastrophic.
Definitely. And time went by fast today.
I know.
There's so much more I could talk about. But if someone watched or listened and they resonated with what you said, what's the best way for them to find you?
My Instagram handle is letitgo.space. And that's also my website, letitgo.space.
I highly recommend reaching out to Natalin. She's been one of my best students and is definitely leading a great example. And she does amazing work. She was always at the top of her classes, and her gifts are phenomenal. Thank you for tuning in today. We got another great episode coming up. I recommend liking, following, and subscribing so you can be notified when it comes out. Peace seeing you.